Thank you for coming to updating the cartographic curriculum. I'm going to turn it over to Craig, who is our moderator, and we will go from there.
Hi, everybody. No. All right. So here's the fun part. I'm losing my voice, so I'm going to do the best I can. I was hoping to ASMR it, but here we go. Welcome to updating the cartographic curriculum. This is something that Meghan Kelly, who couldn't join us today, and I've been thinking about for a little while of what should a set of cartographic ideas look like in the classroom now. So what we're thinking of is, changes in tools, changes in theories, changes in concepts, readings, assignments, all the things that goes into making a good cartographic curriculum. No, okay. So what we wanted to do with this was get together a group of people who are relatively new to the kind of positions where you're rewriting a curriculum. Get some fresh ideas, get some new ideas. And so, maybe you can introduce yourselves to save time. Self-introduce just a little bit about who you are, where you're at, but also kind of what the scope of the program is. Because coming from undergraduate land, there's different expectations than folks who are in a big graduate program.
Cool. Hi, thanks for having me. Sorry, I had no idea this room was up here, which is bad because I'm a board member. So I was trying to find where is my own panel. But yeah, I'm Bill Limpisathian. I'm assistant professor of cartography at UW-Madison. And it will be 2 years in January since I joined the department. And yeah, we're a full undergrad, master's, PhD program specifically in cartography, which is separate from our geography degree. So yeah, glad to be here.
Super duper. Testing. Okay. For accessibility AV people, is there any way we can get this working in case people happen to need the amplified sound? Okay, thank you. I hate I'm just going to speak loud thing, but for now, I'm just going to speak loud. I'm Heather Rosenfeld, they, them, or she, her. I am the director of the Spatial Analysis Lab at Smith College, which is, if you haven't heard of it, a small liberal arts college, and there is no geography program. We have a GIS class and aerial imagery and cinematography class that are offered regularly, and then occasional things that we get to offer. So tiny, liberal arts oriented, pretty community oriented, and I'll talk more about that later.
Yeah.
The microphones are just there to pick up for the recording. There is no speaker in the room. It doesn't fit with the size of the room with the speakers.
Okay.
So you just have to speak loud, and the microphones are just make the recording possible.
With the door closed, it's probably okay.
Yeah.
It's locked from the outside, but
This is getting better and better. Well, thank you all for coming. Maybe we're going to stay here longer than we meant to.
Escape room.
I'm Jim Thatcher, and part of sort of the impetus that drove Meghan and Craig and I to put this together is we were actually just talking about cartography curriculum that we were all updating and making changes. So I had been at University of Washington, Tacoma for a decade, and I moved to Oregon State University, where I am now. And when I came over, I inherited a suite of classes that sort of had been hot potatoed for 8 or so years. It might have only been 6. I'd have to go and check, right? And asked to update them and bring them in line with our broader curriculum and fit them, and really also start offering cartography as an area of specialization for our graduate students, which it hadn't been in quite some time. And so I'm going to be talking a bit about that, and I will turn it over to Carolyn. I will also note one other thing. If you look in the schedule, there are some names on the session that are not here. They all dropped out very close to the start of the conference, and though we tried to get things updated it didn't happen.
Not
Like,
their fault.
Not their fault. Yeah, so
Administration
don't get mad at
problems.
them. You can get mad at me if you want to, but really it was just the timing as to when things went to print and what have you. So forgive me if that's who we're really here to see.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Fish. I'm at the University of Oregon, and I am at least one of a couple panelists who were asked to step in more recently. And at the University of Oregon, we have both a geography degree as well, undergrad degree, as well as a spatial data science degree. And this past spring, we just lost 3 tenure track faculty, junior faculty. So I am the only tenure track faculty member in spatial data science, but my amazing colleague, Nick Kohler back here, is career faculty and is doing basically all of the teaching in spatial data science right now because I am on leave this year. So Nick can also talk about that. And we're really thinking about revamping the curriculum and kind of changing it up because of all of this turnover and the program being originally developed by 2 folks who were retired and left University of Oregon before I was even there. So I hope to talk about some of that in this panel.
That is a hell of a situation. So my name
We have a job too, by the way. I should plug. We do have a tenure track position. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Open rank tenure track position in spatial data science, broadly defined. So we really would like a diverse applicant pool. So please consider applying or tell other folks about it.
And Eugene's pretty nice. It's not as nice as Corvallis, but
But you're close to Jim.
yeah, that's
too.
true. You get to be closer.
All right. Sorry, Clancy.
Hi, I'm Clancy. So I'm going to tell you my full title, and it's going to become important later. So I'm technically an assistant professor of critical cartography, geovisualization, and design at the University of California, Berkeley, in the Department of Geography. We have a Department of Geography. We have what I've come to call a Franken minor, which is a GIST minor situated across 3 colleges that nobody can figure out how to complete. So this is the kind of current situation because a bunch of people put it together, a bunch of people left, and currently I think I'm one of 2 maybe GIS people on campus. And I don't do GIS because it's critical cartography, geovisualization, and design, which will become important later.
Okay, so big, wide question first. What are you trying to accomplish with these changes in curriculum? And I see, Carolyn, do you want to take the first shot? Because I think you've got a slide for this. Yeah.
Sure. You can
No, I think
Go
that's
to-
Jim.
Yeah, that's my slide. I can also answer this.
That's my.
I just threw my
We will just
slides
do
in
that.
there. I didn't really have like a order. Actually, maybe go to the next one. So this is our spatial data science major curriculum. What's the question? Sorry.
What are you trying to achieve?
What are we trying to achieve? So the original goal of this curriculum was designed by Amy Lobin and Chris Bone, who Amy is still she's in a phased retirement, but not teaching very much for us anymore. And Chris Bone left the University of Oregon before I started there, and I started there 6 years ago. So, but their original goal with this program was to really allow for students to kind of just take a few very basic intro courses, and then that would just open them up to being able to kind of fill out the program with elective courses. What I've found over the past 6 years is that there's really no scaffolding across this, and I teach GI Science 1, which is, I'm going to say, Nick, you can correct me, about 90 students a term. We are on the quarter system. So that's, I realize quarters actually means thirds, but it means we teach about 90 students 3 times a year. So, and that course served as a prereq for basically all of our other classes. What that meant is that this 181, Our Digital Earth, really didn't, it's like so basic, but isn't a prereq for any of our other courses. We're in the process of getting rid of 281 because the faculty member who taught that just left UO, and it was already providing a lot of complication and confusion for students. But really what I'm trying to think about is how do we kind of scaffold this major? We still need to have 181, that Our Digital Earth, because we need to, it's a gen ed course that attracts a lot of students, that kind of thing. But now that it's like Nick and I, we don't have any remote sensors right now. Yes, you teach remote sensing, but we don't have any dedicated remote sensors. We don't have any dedicated like spatial analysis person. I'm like in this mode of like, should we just throw out this whole thing and make a cartography major? Because I'm the person that's there. I think actually Nick might like that too. I don't know. Yeah. So anyways, I'm trying to figure this out, what this means with this change in personnel and the fact that I'm still an assistant professor, but I am like I am the person. I'm the only tenure track person teaching in this. So anyways, it's just kind of a interesting conundrum there. But really the whole kind of impetus behind this was just like openness so that students could add this major late in their time at UO, which I think we all can understand for the most part. Geography and GIS are kind of discovery majors, right? So that was the original idea.
Can I follow up on that? Because
Yeah.
mine speaks directly to that. I think I'm the other way. Keep going. Yeah, okay, so I actually have been thinking a lot about the fact that geography in general and cartography in specific are often late found majors. And part of why I've been thinking about that is because it limits kind of what I'm able to do with my students, specifically my undergrad students, right? Like I get them to a point where they're really strong and then they've graduated. And that's not, the end of the world. The point here is to graduate and educate. But I've been thinking about if it would be possible to start trying to pull students into cartography as early as possible. And this course is kind of the driver before it. So OSU, as large universities often do, is like upheaving their entire undergraduate curriculum, and they're creating a gen ed where it's called the baccalaureate core. Each core is an acronym because I'm sure some admin got paid a lot to come up with it. I don't know what it means. But basically there's 11 categories. And you have to take a class in each of those categories, and each college within the university is supposed to have a course that covers each of those 11 categories. My college, which is stacked with remote scientists and what have you, didn't have one in communication as the category. So I decided to kind of hold up my critical cartography nose and pitch maps as objects of communication and try to create this very low level general ed course that is a map reading course. It's not a map making course, but it's about talking about where maps fit in society, how they're used. We talk about the map communication model, and then we critique it, and we do things like that in this course. And the idea there is that this would be a course that will run every quarter. It will seat up to 200, and it will be ideally students getting really excited and interested in cartography in their first or second years on campus. And that, assuming it works, and maybe it won't, but assuming it works, that will hopefully draw students into geography, and more specifically into cartography, by their second year, which is earlier than I'm usually attracting undergraduate students at this time, where I usually get them late in their junior or even their senior year. And so that's what I'm trying to accomplish. And you can see this is just like a couple slides from a very bare bones syllabus that is undergoing, it's like stuck in the queue for final approval because we have like 400 courses under review right now because we decided to blow up our baccalaureate core. But
Have you taught this course?
no,
Okay.
it will be
This
taught
is-
for the first time next fall.
This is very interesting because I'm gonna. Can I like?
You could take that.
Yeah.
You can critique that.
Yes. No. Actually, well,
just go.
jumping to if I can find my slides, I have very different problems to some of approaches to some of our speakers. In a lot of ways, I'm very privileged to be at Madison because not only do we have, I'm one of 3 cartography professors who are not our GIS professors because we have 4 more GIS professors in addition. We have a fully thought out curriculum of cartography. These are exclusively our cartography offering within a framework because I work with Rob Roth, who loves frameworks, as offered. And the 2 highlighted circles are what I contributed to the framework, or the 2 classes that I've developed coming in almost 2 years ago now. One is a high-level project-based class that sort of takes my experiences across production lab and industry and elsewhere. But the other is a super intro freshman level course that I called Maps in Our Changing Society that I'm in the process of teaching for the second time, that actually is exactly what Jim is proposing at the course, which is wonderful. I was like, do we share a brain? Because it is a map reading.
And a fashion sense.
Yes, and a fashion sense, of course. It is wholly a map reading course. They don't actually make a map during this course. We talk about what is a map from a philosophical, psychological, historical perspective. Like what does it mean to lie with map? What are the power ingrained in maps? And then I bring on all of my cartography friends of like, who are modern cartographers, map makers? What are we doing with this career? And it's restricted solely to our freshman first semester student every fall. And it has a max enrollment of 20 kids. No TAs, just me and a bunch of freshmen ready to learn, excited about college and figure out what is this. So A, it helps us create a community early, and B, it gets kids excited about cartography and geography and not waiting until junior year when they flunk out of engineering. And I'm happy to report that I had 17 kids last year. So I teach this in the fall, and then I teach intro cart in the spring. I had 6 students continue on in the spring afterwards. And now, a year later, a bunch of them are starting to get hired in our cart lab and are volunteering and taking more geography classes and becoming cartography majors. So it's a interesting approach that I think a lot of our programs, a lot of like university level cartography program would benefit from, of like, instead of being stuck with those like our digital art classes that are geared towards everyone, but then getting no one into the program, a more strategic targeted approach might be better. So this class is part of a program called FIG, which is a first year interest group program, where as orientation, students coming in, they are grouped together by interests. So my class falls into sort of like the political science, environmental study interests. And it's also linked to other intro gen ed courses, environmental studies, intro to environmental studies and intro to international studies. So they have to take all 3 of these courses together in a semester, and they build community and they fall in love with, or at least I hope they fall in love with maps and cartography and want to learn more.
Can I actually just take that as a transition and move to the next question? Are there particular traditions, scholars, academics, practitioners, or examples that you draw from for your inspiration in designing these courses? What do they bring to your classes and your curriculum design? And I think, Heather, you have a really good example to start this.
I can, with the caveat that my notes are also on this computer, so I'm going to be winging it, but yes. All right, So I think many of us know and miss Carl Sack. I also don't normally like get any kind of emotional during panels, but that might happen. So Carl was a UW-Madison grad who was teaching at Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College and was also doing a lot of really amazing anti-colonial activism, environmental activism, Carl is a huge inspiration to me and I think a lot of other people pedagogically. So if you're not familiar with his work countermapping the Dakota Access Pipeline, Dakota Access Pipeline. So if you see on the left, there's the company's map that has this very neutral tone to it. It's kind of minimal in terms of the information. You have like, what counties does it go through? Cheers. And then Carl worked with indigenous folks fighting the pipeline to say, what kind of map do you need? And also what would help to show people where to go to support the protest. And so Carl put together this map and also talked in this Huffington Post piece that he put together about an indigenous made map of the area, which is in the lower left. And then the upper right map is the one that he made. And I mean, I take all kinds of inspiration for this in terms of how I approach my courses. But one way, so I mentioned small liberal arts college. I occasionally get to teach something if I want to. And I have taught, I was teaching at Smith before, environmental research methods kinds of classes. And one of the things that students are really interested in is partnering with community organizations. And so we took inspiration from Carl's map, from the work that he was doing to do a somewhat similar project of partnering with a local environmental and climate justice group called Climate Action Now, who is fighting a proposed pipeline in Springfield, Massachusetts, so about a half an hour's driving south of where Smith is. And we asked the group what they were what they would be interested in mapping wise, because we had talked before and they were interested in maps of the pipeline. And they zoomed into the class and talked with the students, and then the students put together maps over the course of about 3 weeks. And so that's an example that I think could be brought into a cartography class to be done in a much more kind of design-oriented way, to be done in maybe different software. We were all using QGIS for this. Again, over like a 0 to 60 in 3 weeks for the students. And it could also be done in, again, like kind of a extended lab environment for a lot of different kinds of classes. So that's just one example.
Anyone else want to take on that question? What influences?
Yeah, one take
ideas?
on the influences of Carl.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to go?
I mean, I can say, I'm not sure what I've got to say that might directly relate, but I suppose I can spin it. If you want to bring to the slide number 10.
Which one?
10.
10.
Yeah. So I think for me, where I work is a really tricky place, just because, I mean, I think a really good example in a recent search for a position, these two phrases were uttered by different colleagues during the same process. One was, I love my colonial science, and one was, we can't hire a positivist. And so this is the space in which I teach. We have a Frankenminer that doesn't work, and I've sort of given up on that for the moment, and I'm just like realizing that this is basically the only cartography class that students will get a chance to take while they're at Berkeley, because there's not really anyone else who teaches it. And I've sort of, when I was designing it, I haven't actually taught it yet, but the questions that guided the design of this were generated from, I taught a Maps in Society course a couple of years ago, a big lower division course that I designed in a way that was contrapuntal, so it wasn't interested in the history of cartography so much as the features that were being mapped. So we had weeks on like polar mapping, weeks on ocean mapping, weeks on mountains, and looked at the different kinds of traditions from different groups of people who might be mapping those objects. I also got a fair bit of money, like 25 grand, to think about how to teach technical skills to students as well. The peculiarities of the institution is that we get a lot of students into the arts, humanities and social sciences who are very anti-technical and I would say even terrified of basic mathematics. And I find myself having office hours with students where I'm like, okay, this is the Pythagorean theorem and it's okay if you cry, but we're still going to get through it. But then there's also a very strong anti-theoretical STEM population as well, that have no interest in learning about questions of ethics or the impact of technology, and don't see why they should have to learn about that at all. The university puts most of its money not into teaching technology as well. Like, I went to ASU a couple of years ago and I was like, wow, what is this heaven? You have computers that turn on and work. This is awesome. The university places its resources into research, and I've even had problems where they've put computers in teaching rooms that use chalk, because everyone still uses chalk, and like the dust in the CPUs is something extraordinary. The student ratio numbers are getting really high as well, particularly for technical courses. So I can keep my classes to about 80 students, but they're coming from technical courses. So if you want to take Data 8, which is Intro to Data Science, that's got about 1,500 students on it. Intro to Comp Sci, which we also get a lot of cartographers, is about 3,000 students. And so these are the kinds of STEM courses that are coming in as well. And they're learning some skills, but they're also learning to be instrumental, it's a bit difficult. And the result is that basically everyone on campus seems to want to be a founder. They want to found a company, sell it to a startup, make it a startup, sell it to a tech company, make a lot of money. There are less people interested in being learners, and far fewer interested in being thinkers as well. And so this is the kind of situation. And the real problem is the number of cartography educators on campus is one. It's me. And I haven't had a chance to actually teach how to make a map because I've been bounced around, because for a long time the number of GIS educators who were tenure-line faculty was one, which is me. Now we have two, but they're on sabbatical. So like maybe we'll have three in the near future, and this is like extraordinary. And so I have just like a range of questions that I think kind of have inspired me to sort of think about how do I design this curriculum in a way that I'm not going to turn students into people who are going to be monstered when they go into my colleagues' classes as well by saying things like, maps are cool. It's like, oh no, they're colonial objects, out. Or like, maybe we need to think about who we're mapping. No, never. You're thinking too critically, out. So I need to also teach them in ways that mean that they can also sit in other people's classrooms as well. So the guiding questions are basically, I've sort of put them into critical, creative, and professional. So, how do we get students to think critically? And for me, the question is always, where are ethics learned best? Where in a curriculum is the deepest, best sense of ethical construction sort of found? How do you build in theory and a deep reflection as well, so you don't end up with people with superficial theory and actually go out and do more damage by kind of throwing heavy concepts at a problem they don't understand? And what does a contrapuntal technical course look like as well? So contrapuntal in the sense that Matt Spark talks about, where you've kind of got two sort of keys that are almost completely opposite being played at the same time, that have this sense of comparison. In creative, how do we be question-driven, not software-driven? And this is a big problem. Like, a lot of students come in, they like the worksheet. I'm like, but it means you can only do the worksheet. When do we introduce discipline and tradition as well? And this is a big problem in terms of inclusivity. And the students that I have in my classroom have been often disciplined in really brutal ways as well. And I think it's important to learn the traditions. The question is just when, in a way that doesn't stifle their pushing back and attempting to make change. And how do we encourage them to also take risks as well? And then finally, just really professionally, because no one at Berkeley likes to think about people actually getting jobs. How do we build durable skills? I always tell my students I'm really, really good at coding Flash, like ActionScript. And as Heather was saying as well, like work that matters as well, actually getting them to engage and sort of go out into the world and already start working in spaces that they're going to see that. So these are the kinds of questions that have been guiding the chaos of this course, which has just gotten through COSI and is going to be taught next semester. Yeah.
To kind of follow up on one of those questions, or go for it.
No. If you're gonna,
I was going to say, if you're one thing I'm consistently finding in my cartography classes is that how to not excessively discipline and get them to think creatively, but also to think about the things they want to push it back against, and what your inspirations and kind of what your sources are in that thinking creatively, but also within limits kind of environment.
Yeah.
Well, it's really hard because they want to be super creative, but then they want a rubric that tells them exactly how to get an A. It's like those don't. I can't do that.
No.
Kind of riffing on all of that, and also now that I'm looking at my notes, one of the other things that I think I try to take a lot of inspiration from, not things, groups of people that I try to take inspiration from are my students. And so on the one hand, just conversations in classes. So I have taught, and maybe we'll teach again, kind of practice-based critical cartography class. So readings and discussions one day, making stuff in the lab the other day. And in one of the discussions, one of my students asked, should we be making ugly maps? Kind of in response to our hegemonic design socialization. And that has stuck with me and still sticks with me, and I would love to keep talking about what that means later on. But the other thing that I try to build in structurally is on my syllabi, I have a section that are like, these are my expectations of you, that are a lot about kind of community care and communication. And then we have a section that's your expectations for me and for your classmates. And we fill that out together. And that sometimes means changing certain things about my class. Usually not like huge things that entail restructuring it entirely, but maybe changing out a reading or an assignment, or maybe posting a certain kind of structure if they ask for it. And so I think it's important that we all kind of continuously listen to our students and build in some kind of structure to make sure we're doing that.
can you go to the one that says my name on it? That one.
There we go.
I'm gonna take a step back to your original question, which was about inspiration. These are, I was like, well, what do I teach here? So I thought I would kind of start with that. GI Science 1, I mentioned, is like this huge, relatively large class that gets taught 3 times a year. I teach it usually once a year. And it's a really, really fun class. I feel like I've been told by other folks who are cartographers, oh, I don't want to teach GIS. And I love teaching GIS. I think it's actually more fun to me than cartography. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. I think because I just get to like kind of break down some of these things that I found really confusing as an undergrad. I'm going to talk about those other 3 classes though, and who is the inspiration, or kind of what is the inspiration behind them. So data-driven cartography, this is a new class that I developed 2 years ago. Bill, when did we teach that first time? A couple years ago. 2 years ago. 2.5. Bill was my first TA for that class. He did an immense amount of work. And that class, I really was drawing a lot of inspiration from Cindy Brewer, who was my PhD advisor on that class, in a couple different ways. One, we only use ArcGIS, and this is because I really see that a lot of students go on to local government jobs and that kind of thing. They never have access to Illustrator or need to make kind of these like one-off beautiful print maps at the end of things. So I want them to be able to like make a really nice map in GIS software. The other thing, and I totally stole this from Cindy, is I don't give them instructions really. Like in my GIS class, it's like now click here, and now click here, and now click here, because that's what you have to do when you're teaching 90 students a term who come from an insanely broad set of students, from grads to undergrads. But in data-driven cartography, it's a smaller course, and cartography is so iterative that it doesn't like necessarily follow a step-by-step kind of thing. So it's really just like a lot of screenshots and kind of like get your map to like something like this, but I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do it and provide an order or anything like that. Advanced cartography, on the other hand, I inherited from Jim Meacham, who taught it for, we were trying to figure out this morning, 25 plus years. And he always taught it in Illustrator. So that's kind of my Illustrator course. And one of the things that, a couple things that I've done is, one, now data-driven cartography is the prereq for it. So I'm trying to add that scaffolding into our program. But the big thing is here that we have 10-week quarters, right? So it's really fast. And 70%, so 7 of the 10 weeks are spent on one project. And we iterate on that project multiple times. And I've kind of gone through this thing, like, I took Jim's original class and I was like, all right, the first year I was like, I'm just gonna teach exactly what Jim teaches. And I realized all the ways in which I am not Jim, and that didn't really work for me. And I was so worried about this like final project taking 7 weeks of 10. I was like, oh my God, people are gonna think I don't actually teach these students anything, like whatever. I just realized that in no other course in undergraduate do you ever get to iterate on things for that long. And it is such an important skill set that was like fundamental to it. And so now I'm like, absolutely no, we should be starting on week 1, like on this project. So, and that is really like, I really owe that to Jim, thinking about that. I am so excited to be on this panel with some folks who are thinking about kind of melding that critical aspect and the practical aspect, which is what I've tried to do in that geospatial project design. Because we don't have scaffolding, my students come to that class without really any skills. And so we can't do a lot. And so I haven't taught that class in a few years. I've had 2 kids in the past 3 years, so been a little busy that way. But I'm trying to figure out like how to kind of do that. So I'm really inspired by some of the things that Heather and Clancy were talking about there.
So for the panel, I'm going to skip to question 4 because I think that's where we're going with that. It's about tools and assessment. The first time I walked into my own CART lab as an adjunct, it was drafting tables and Leroy lettering kits, and I panicked because that's not what I was trained on. Now the hair that I have is gray. Other things are changing. So what kind of tools or assessment strategies are you bringing into the classroom? What's been successful? What's worked? And what maybe can we, within the realm of failing boldly, and sometimes that's good, what didn't work?
Yeah, if you want to go to, I've actually put the entire syllabus up on the thing. You can only see half of it because it's one of the things, so it's the very far
11.
side. Yeah. One of the things about Berkeley is that we have 15-week semesters, which means you can get a lot done. Everyone does get very tired, but what I've kind of done with this particular course is what I found works, at least for me, is stopping everybody from they're not allowed to really touch a computer until week 4 or 5, basically because partly it's a humility exercise for the very technical students, but it's also a sort of a gentle kind of inclusion exercise for the students who are not so used to computers. And so often I'll start, I did the same with my GIS course as well, starting with theory, but getting to hand in works that are more creative. Technically, with the GIS course, I got them to hand in, like I made them handwrite code and hand it in. I'm like, I want to see it handwritten code, unless you've got, accommodations and then you can do it typed up, but I want to see it in a Word document. And I want, to see that it's actually there. For this, starting off just doing hand-drawn maps and mind maps, getting to think about the decisions that actual cartographers make when they're sort of faced with a blank page. But also, one of the things is that it's this really tense thing where if it doesn't count for anything, students won't do the work. But if it does count for something, then as Jim said, they go into a meltdown about what their grade is going to be. So I've designed this assessment based upon now, I've been teaching for 15 years and I've been at Berkeley for 5, where there's a bunch of formative assessments that they have to do at the end of each week, which teach them the skills to then sort of put in a summative assessment. So this one's, a piece of cartographic interpretation. They have to start by looking at a map and trying to think about how it was made. But the rule is always that you have to hand in every single assessment to pass the course. So it's pass-fail, you've got to hand them all in, or you fail, but you're only marked on some of them as well. And that has worked really well for, I'm going to say, the very cynical computer science students who, don't feel like they need to do any work whatsoever. I had one student in a course where I very specifically was asked them to make something in HTML, and they sent me their assessment in Python. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't teach you Python. And then they youth-splained to me how to run the notebook. And I'm just like, oh, you are in so much trouble, man. And so I actually forced them to do those assignments. And I'm also honestly a little bit sort of strict on extension policies as well. I don't give extensions. I give other forms of assessment. And so I'm like, I need you to hand in whatever you've got, whenever you've got it, and it's in pieces, that's fine. And then students who struggle with those dates and those deadlines or have stuff happening, then I'm like, we will come up with extra work or other sort of forms of assessment for extra credit to build those back in so that they can stay mostly kept up with the course. Because I've noticed that you give students a bit of time and they start getting behind and it just becomes monumental. So the idea is to try and keep them up as much as possible and then work with individual students so that they can have other assessments that allow them to kind of demonstrate what they weren't able to demonstrate in those shortened extension times. And the thing is that a lot of the problems, I don't know if you guys have this, a lot of students work a lot, like full-time jobs on top of learning. And I'm just like, if you start getting behind, I have no idea how you're ever going to catch up to this course. Like, you can't learn it all in the final week. So that's some of the sort of strategies I've had around assessment that work in my context, and I wouldn't necessarily use them in other contexts, but this is the weird institution I'm at.
I hate assessing them. I hate it. I like to see them working on stuff, but I hate having to assign a grade for it. I'm the opposite.
You love assessment?
No. If a student can't, I'm like, deadlines are for you, not for me. I don't care. Realize you got to get everything done, but they're for you, not for me.
Yeah.
I love deadlines myself. I need them, otherwise things don't get done. So they're for the person doing it.
Yeah, my approach to deadlines, at least, is if you came to me before and asked for an extension and have even if it's a made up reason, I would probably give it to them. I'm not here to investigate whether their uncle's aunt's cousin actually is in the hospital or not. But if you just don't let me know and you submit something late and I don't get a heads up, my policy is they lose 10% a day. So it's a balance of okay, if you talk to me, I can be kind and considerate and understanding, but if you just ignore or blow off the course that you are responsible for, then there should be an outcome or an impact because of it.
Last inputs on TAC or assessment?
It's kind of an interesting question to ask us what hasn't worked, because a lot. And then a lot has gone beautifully, right? I really like Heather. I tried that sort of contract in the syllabus based thing when I was at UWT, and it failed miserably. It just went over
Can you explain that?
Yeah. So it's when there's different ways to sort of approach it, but the kind of overarching thing is, as Heather was saying, is you have a part of your syllabus that's your expectations for me. And it can even go as far as being let's talk about what your assessments are going to be. And I tried that a couple times at my previous institution, and it just wasn't good. And which is interesting because I know, I got the idea from really excellent faculty at that institution who were doing it, and it worked, right? I was inspired by them. I wasn't oh yeah, I'm so much smarter than everybody else. I was no, that's really cool. And then it turned out it just did not work for my classes. And I'm not sure why. And I'd love to try it again. But I have a very different student population now, so it wouldn't be a 1-for-1. It wouldn't tell me anything. It wouldn't tell me if I had improved or not. But other stuff, I've had really free-form assignments where, in one of my advanced CART seminars, I would sort of alternate where originally I was the class was pretty straightforward. It was we're going to read these 5 theory texts, and we're going to talk about them, and you're going to make 4 or 5 maps on these themes writ broadly and large, and you have till the end of the quarter, and they're all due on the last day of the quarter. And the first time I did that, it worked awesome, and I got these amazing things. One group of students built one of those AR sandboxes, got out for my class, and then just donated it to the school. Another class did this amazing, it was a wood cut map of the world, and they had screws where nuclear bombs had been detonated, and the height of the screw correlated to the size of the bomb, and the coloring referred to whether people died from it or not. It was beautiful, gorgeous stuff. And then I was yeah, I nailed it, I got this. And then the next year I did the same thing, and everybody waited till the week before everything was due and tried to do all 4 of the maps, and they were crap. They just weren't good. And that's on me, right? That's me not realizing that the student population that I had was different and was responding differently soon enough. And you get better at that, and I tried to I eventually came to this sort of balance where they would get they had to do check-ins on the maps every week, and the check-ins were you have to have at least this much of whatever you propose doing done by this time, and if you have that, you get full credit, and if you don't, you don't, but still you get to the end of the quarter to finalize things. And that worked really well because it gave them scaffolding. And I guess it was a bit, contracty, because they would make a proposal for what they were going to do, and then we would kind of ramp up that way. And so I think, for me, pedagogy, and maybe this is just the wrong way, but I think it's just realistic, pedagogy is a lot like cartography in that it's a deeply iterative process for me. I never, even if I'm walking in not having updated my classes, I'm not teaching them the same way. I might make some of the same jokes, which get further and further out of touch as I age. but the rest of it is a constant process. And I do also think, for me, I've had a lot of, it's been very interesting coming back into the classroom post-pandemic because the student expectations and the student abilities are very, very different. And I don't think my students are worse or better, but there's ways in which I think those year to years of a very remote, different sort of learning environment has shaped how they expect things to work. And I can't undo all of that in I have 10-week quarters. I can't be ta-da! We're back to the olden days. Hurrah.
You solved
And
all
also, do we
education.
want
I did it. I did it.
Okay, so to wrap it up, two things I want to get to because we're very close on time. Number one, is the comment session still happening? I want to give it a plug.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to throw out a plug for a NACIS comment session happening is later today, right?
Tomorrow.
It's
10 to
tomorrow.
12.
Okay, can you talk a bit more?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I would love to see anybody at tomorrow is a NACIS Commons curriculum fair or curriculum share session where you can, and it would be great if folks brought materials, example maps, syllabi that you want to either share with folks so that people can copy them. I would love to copy some of these map reading classes, for example, or share things with other people so that other people can get inspired. I'll be bringing a copy of that assignment that I talked about that was inspired by some of Carl's work. So yeah, kind of like share materials so we don't all have to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, and I think we might have time for one question from the audience. If anyone has anything pressing.
Well, you go. Some of you already touched this. So we're in a time of disruption, scientific, societal, technological, and this really changes the material that we teach every year. And I was just thinking, like, how your cartography classes has been changed. Like, are you still teaching the same material? Obviously not, but like, what are the core things that needs to be fundamental cartography course?
Just want to give you a chance to talk. You wanna take that?
Sure. I mean, cartography, part of something we talk about in the map reading class is like cartography evolves continuously. Since we can go back millennia, cartography has evolved. But even now, in a lot of ways, like map is still evolving every day, but in this modern time that we live in, people are like realizing more and more of like where maps are everywhere. It's in people's pockets. It's actually, I use your interview video about Google Maps for my intro fit class just to get kids thinking about like, oh, this application on your phone is like maps and cartography and all of these, and they're tracking you, and there's ethical and unethical uses of cartography. So like in a way, I feel like there are more avenues for us to like connect with our students to make them realize that, oh, this isn't like an old crafty art kind of thing that isn't relevant anymore, but actually it's more relevant than ever. It's in every parts of our lives, and it's not going anywhere. And like you either like realize it and learn to be considerate and use it responsibly through these educational opportunities we have, or they're doomed to it. And even stuff like memeified maps, like the Donald Trump hurricane maps. These are like pop culture moments that are occurring. Like those are dark, grim, and horrible examples in a lot of ways, but like they know about it, people hear about it, and you could be like, okay, these maps aren't just like a random piece of information that like people are using it to make real impactful decisions about your life, either good or bad. So it's important for them to know and for us to highlight.
Probably should end on that.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much.